James Trower.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Okay, all right. I'm gonna set my down. No. All right. How y'all doing, ladies? Woo! I hope y'all don't mind me standing up here. I want to be able to see everybody. I am so excited to be here. Y'all have no idea. It's a dream come true. Any man that tell you being in a room full of beautiful women is not a dream come true, they lying to you. This is truly a dream come true. Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah. All right, let's check. Clap one time if you can hear me. Clap 2 times if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you're a diva. All right, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, again, I'm so excited to be here. When Yvonne introduced me, she mentioned that I was learning to fly to be a pilot, right? And some of y'all was probably thinking, why? Because that's what my family thinks, especially at my age. You know, I know I look like a millennial, but I'm a dinosaur, all right? And I'm going to tell you the reason why that I decided to become a pilot. It's because there came a point in my life where I refused to be average. And let me explain what I mean by that. Some years ago, one of my mentors shared a quote with me that changed my life forever, and you've probably heard it. He said to me, James, on the other side of your fears is everything you dream of. He went on to tell me that it's your fears that are holding you back and preventing you from truly pursuing your dreams. And I took that to heart. So I started doing some soul searching to find out what fears I had that were holding me back from truly pursuing my dreams. And there were 2 of them. The first one was the fear of speaking in front of people. And that probably sounds normal because most people are. As a matter of fact, statistics show that the average person would rather die than speak in front of a group of people. And I can attest to that, the truth, because there was a point in time, if you would have asked me to come up and speak to some people, I would assume the position right away. But I've overcome that fear, obviously. The second one was my fear of flying. All right? I don't know if y'all remember back in the 80s, there was a show called The A-Team. All right? Y'all remember The A-Team? And y'all remember Mr. T? I pity the fool. He was scared of flying. The only way they can get Mr. T on the airplane was to bust him upside the head with a 2x4, or they had to sedate him. And it was funny because every time they get to their destination, he'd be wake up and he's behind the van. He's like, where we at? They said, Morocco. Morocco? How we get to Morocco? We took a boat. A boat? You know, he never knew how he got. But that was my fear of flying. And again, I came to a point where I refused to be average. So I said, you know what? I'm going to overcome that fear by training to become a pilot. And that's what I'm doing. Refuse to be average, yes. Refuse to be average. Because did you know that the average person lives and dies with their music still in them? The average person goes through life never realizing their true talents and gifts. The average person doesn't even set goals, and they spend their whole life working for some people that do. And the average person is afraid to fail, so they dare not even try. And they wonder why every morning they fight in traffic to go to a job they probably hate, to work for a boss they despise. Refuse to be average. And there's one thing you can do that can ensure that you'll never be average. And that one thing is to become a person who embraces challenges. In other words, become a leader. Because that's what leaders do. That's what real leaders do. They embrace challenges. They don't run from them. Because leaders know that challenges, they help you to grow. They help you to grow mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. And in this business of direct sales, you're going to face many challenges. Many challenges. And I'm pretty sure if you fully engaged and you've gone all in your business, you probably experience them on a daily basis. Am I right or wrong? Yes. That's right. But it's not those things, those obstacles that we run into that defines us. All right? What defines us is how we respond to those challenges and those obstacles. That's what defines us at the end of the day, is how we respond. And that brings me to one of my favorite authors. It's Carol Dweck. Anybody ever heard of Carol Dweck? She coined the term growth mindset. If you're not familiar with her, I encourage you to look into her work. It is powerful. And she did a study once with a group of young people. And I think she could have done it with a group of old people and had the same results. But she did a study with a group of young people where she gave them a series of puzzles to solve. And the first round of puzzles she gave them were real easy, not really challenging at all, right? But the second series of puzzles she gave these young people, they were much harder, much more challenging. And this is what she noticed. When faced with the harder, more challenging puzzles, there were some kids that threw their hands up and quit, said, I can't do it, these are too hard. Can I just stick with the easy puzzles? Do you know anybody like that in life? Always complaining, oh, I can't do it, it's too hard. You know, they just want the easy way in life. They want to stick with the easy puzzles in life. And then there was the other group, when introduced to the harder, more challenging puzzles, what did they do? They rolled their sleeves up, rubbed their hands together and said, I love a challenge. That's the mindset of a leader. That's the mindset you have to ensure that you'll never be average. And it's all about mindset. I don't care whatever endeavor you're in. If you don't have the correct mindset, it's not going to happen for you. I remember, I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do, it's something that I'm going to learn something from. And in about a couple of weeks, I've seen something on the History Channel. And they was talking about all these great titans of men that, you know, changed the world, the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the Henry Fords, and they were talking about all the food industry, Kellogg's and all of them. And they was talking about the challenges that these men had to face in order to do what they did. And they had some great challenges. You know, sometimes in the middle of the night, mysteriously their factories were burned down. And you'd be like, how'd that happen? It was stiff competition. It was cutthroat. Then I got to thinking, yeah, they had a lot of challenges, though, man. But then I got to thinking, men wasn't the only one person. There was a lot of women back there innovating some things. Just imagine the challenges that they had to go through. All right, and I think of like, I don't know if y'all even know this person, Madam C.J. Walker. Who's ever heard of her? She did some incredible things back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And then came Mary Kay. Are you kidding me? She waited till after she was retired and decided she's going to start her dream company. And everybody was waiting around, waiting for her to fail. She had a lot of challenges to overcome. And she did it because of her mindset. Look what she created. Ain't nothing average about Mary Kay. Ain't nothing average about Mary Kay. She created something powerful. And it all starts with mindset. All right? I want to share with y'all a story real quick that talks about, it's a metaphor that talks about the power of faith and your imagination. Because I believe this is where it all starts. If you don't see it here first, you're never going to experience it out there. All right? So here's this story. Once upon a time, there was a little seed that dared to dream big. And its dream was to become a rose. But not just any rose. It had a dream of becoming the most beautiful red rose in the world. This little seed had a big dream. The only problem was that the environment or the conditions that this seed was born in, it wasn't known for growing roses. It was only known for growing weeds. And while all the other seeds had accepted this as the truth, this one little seed refused to accept it. And despite all the negativity and beat downs from the other seeds, this one little seed remained faithful. And it was determined to become the most beautiful red rose in the world because it had a burning desire from within to be the most beautiful red rose in the world. So every day, while all the other seeds were spending their extra time in the day playing video games, this little seed remained faithful to his dreams. And it spent its time playing his own games, where it would sit and imagine on the screen of his mind itself being the most beautiful red rose in the world. And every day, while all the other seeds were spending their time watching TV, this little seed remained faithful to its dreams. And it would spend its time watching itself again on the screen of its mind, where it would imagine itself doing what it would do as the most beautiful red rose in the world. And every day, while all the other seeds was trolling on social media, this little seed remained faithful to its dreams. And it would spend its time trolling itself by repeating to itself over and over again, I am the most beautiful red rose in the world. Even before it was, way before it was. And while all those other seeds had accepted defeat, this one little seed remained faithful and had the courage to imagine. And eventually, the most beautiful red rose in the world burst from beneath the concrete. Your past does not determine your future. No matter what you've been through, no matter what you're going through, your circumstances, past or present, do not define who you are or who you can become. Regardless of the conditions or the environment you might be finding yourself in, there's a power in you that can change it. And that is the power of your faith and your imagination. Every successful person throughout life first had to have faith in their ability to succeed, then they had the courage to imagine the possibilities. Our imagination is powerful. Before he became the greatest heavyweight boxer of all times, Muhammad Ali, he first had faith in his ability to become the greatest. And then he had the courage to imagine. And Ali, he used words, and he spoke his greatness into existence. I am the greatest. He spoke it into existence. So what is it that you're imagining for yourself? What is it that you can speak into your life? Right? What are your hopes? What are your dreams and aspirations? Is it the one day quit your job and tell your boss to take a hike? Right? Is it the one day to build a 6-figure income or 7-figure income? Whatever your goal and your dream is, the key to unlocking it lies within your faith and your imagination. I got a crazy wisdom. Some people think I'm crazy when I'm telling this. I wake up every morning at 4 a.m. and I meditate for an hour from 4 to 5 like clockwork. I've been doing this for years. I don't even need an alarm. My body wakes up at like 3:58 without an alarm. And I meditate from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And during that meditation, I think it's so important that you find time to be still and quiet that mind. That what they call that monkey mind. I remember when my mind used to keep me up at night, I couldn't even sleep. It was just racing so much. But I learned to quiet it. And I think it's so important that we learn to be still. So that first hour, I'm not thinking about nothing. My mind is just quiet. I work on just quieting my mind. After that hour, I spend another maybe 15 minutes doing some journaling, writing. I do some reading, some scripture reading, whatever it is, pick something up and read it. I do that. And then after that, I spend another 25 minutes of visualizing. That's when my mind is working. But it's working on what I want it to work on, not something that I'm worried about what happened yesterday or might happen tomorrow. That's when I sit and close my eyes and I visualize my life as I want it to be. Not like, oh, one day this is what it's going to be. No, I visualize it like it's already happening. It's right now. Our imagination is the most powerful tool we have in our arsenal. But some people are so afraid to use it. When it depends, some groups, I tell them that, what I do and I visualize and meditate, they look at me like I'm crazy. That's one of the hardest things for us to do, is to be still and to quiet the mind. But once you get that practice, I'm telling you, it's powerful. Don't be afraid to imagine. Don't be afraid to imagine. How many of y'all could mindset, it's all about mindset. It's all about how we think and what we think. How many of y'all here know who Charlie Brown is? You know Charlie Brown? All right, everybody knows Charlie Brown. All right. Did you know, though, that the World Encyclopedia of Comics says that Charlie Brown is an example of the great American unsuccess story? And that he fails at almost everything he does. It goes on to describe Charlie Brown as a lovable loser. A child, they say, who was possessed with endless potential and hope, but who was ultimately dominated by his own insecurities and perceived bad luck. And it's easy to see. If you took a real good look at the Charlie Brown character, you will see he comes to us walk around with this kind of woe is me type energy. It may not be as obvious as Slep Rocks from the Flintstones. Who's with me? All right. But it's there. It's there. All right. But the point is, we are all being conditioned in some way to be just like Charlie Brown. Because we are alive with our hopes and dreams. But we allow our own fears and insecurities to dominate our minds and prevent us from truly pursuing our dreams. We play it safe. All right? We dare not take any risk. We're going to stay right here in our comfort zone. But in order for you to truly pursue after your dreams, you got to first learn to quiet those Charlie Brown type stories that have taken up residence in your mind. You know the stories I'm talking about. Those ones that you probably heard or read that make you feel like you're not worthy. Those stories that you probably heard or read that make you feel like you're not good enough or smart enough. Those stories that you've heard or read that make you feel like you're not pretty enough or talented enough. And it's not just Charlie Brown. I don't want you Peanuts fans getting mad at me thinking I'm picking on old Paul Charlie Brown. But it's all those Charlie Brown type stories that are being embedded into our subconscious mind throughout the course of our lives, through our television programs, our motion pictures, our 24-hour news cycle, social media, and even our own cultural stories that are passed down to us from generation to generation. These stories, they feed our inner critic. And your inner critic has one job, and that's to keep you safe from disappointment and pain. And your inner critic is always hard at work, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It don't take no vacations. It's always there. And it's always putting obstacles in your path in the form of doubts in your mind. Example, have you ever set a goal and you were excited about achieving it? You wrote it down. You probably even took a bar of soap and wrote it on your mirror in your bathroom. Yeah, I do that. My mirror is lit up right now. All right, I do it. It's powerful. If you don't do it, if you don't write your goals down, you just daydreaming. You wasting your time. Write them down on your mirror, on paper. Write them down. But after you write it down, after a while, you start doubting it and you start saying, but man, what if it doesn't work? What if I fail? If you're having thoughts like that, like what do people think of me? What, heavens forbid, what would they say of me? If you have any thoughts like that after setting a goal, say hello to your inner critic who is doing his job to keep you safe from disappointment and pain and stuck right where you are in the same old same. That inner critic is a dream slayer, and it leaves in its wakes the hopes and aspirations of humanity. Yeah, and you're probably wondering, why are you telling me this? I'm telling you this so you understand that you got two choices to live your life and to build your business, either by faith or in fear. Which one will you choose? Which one have you chosen? All right? Because the good news is it's never too late to hit restart. It's never too late, no matter where you are in life or where you are in your business. It's never too late to say, okay, hit restart, I'm going to start anew, let's go. And it reminds me of, I'm going to get off base because this is a good story. Back in the day, I was never a big video game player. Back in the 80s, I played Zelda. Who remembers Zelda? I was good at Zelda. I used to love Zelda. And then in the 90s, I played NFL Madden. Those are the only two video games I've ever played in my life. And I was good at both of them because I just focused on those. In the 90s, when I played Madden, I was really good. I used to always go over my sister's house and play my nephew, and I would destroy him every time. I beat him 42. I don't think he ever scored on me. He never scored a point. I beat him 56-0. I remember one time I almost scored 100 points on him. And back then, I was brutal. I was like, who's your daddy? He's like, you? I was like, yeah, that's right. I was like, Terrence, look what I found in your wallet. Loser! I would give this youngster the blues every time I played him. I was brutal. So he wouldn't play me for years. And then I think 3 years passed. And one day I'm over to visit. He said, Uncle James, let's play some Madden. I kind of laughed. You want some of this? He said, nah, I want all of that. I was like, what? I was like, I know. I said, all right, let's go. So we're in the living room and we playing. By the time the halftime buzzer goes off, the score is already 56-0. And he whooping me. And he's giving me the blue. He walking around, now who's your daddy? I'm like, you. He said, Uncle James, look what I found in your wallet. Capital One and loser. He was all up in my face. His breath was kicking like Kung Fu Panda. He needed an Altoid, a Tic Tac, and some bubble gum. His breath was so bad. And I got mad. I jumped up and accidentally tripped over the power cord. Oh, you should have seen his face. I plugged the cord back in, turned the TV back on, turned the game cancel back on, hit reset, and the score was 0-0. And I'll tell you this to let you know, no matter how much you're down in life, No matter what the score is in the game of life, you can always hit restart and start over. Always. You can always start over. You know, I know when Yvonne, when she introduced me, she told you a little about myself. You know, I grew up in New York and I grew up in Brooklyn, but I want to give y'all my whole story. I want to give y'all more because it's going to lead you to the point to why I'm standing here today speaking to you. I'm not here by accident. I am not here. What I do, traveling around speaking to adults, speaking to kids, is not by accident. I want to share my story with you. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and when I was growing up, my dad was a magician who was well known for his card tricks, at least in Brooklyn, right? And when I was 5 years old, he showed me another one of his tricks that he was working on. He was real good at it. It was his disappearing act. And I'm still waiting for him to reappear. If y'all see him, let me know. They say he looked just like me, all right? And when I was 8 years old, my mom, she left out of the apartment one day, and I said, Mom, where you going? She said, oh, I'll be right back. I got to go see a man about a horse. And the door closed, and I was standing there confused at 8. I was like, because I ain't never seen any horses in Brooklyn before. I was like, she's going to see a horse? 3 days later, there was a knock at our door, and it was Child Protective Services. And they came, and they took me and my brothers and sisters away. And it wasn't until many years later I learned that going to go see a man about a horse, that was like code for going to go buy some heroin from the local drug dealer. You see, my mom was addicted to drugs pretty much her whole life. She went from shooting up heroin to smoking crack to abusing prescription meds. So I spent my childhood as a resident of the New York City foster care system, where I moved from one group home or foster home to the next. I'm telling you, growing up, I changed schools and moved so much, I started to write my name on my homework assignments as James U-Haul. That's how much moving we did. And to top it off, when I was 12 years old, the only positive role model I had in my life was murdered by some gang members for his 10-speed bike. And I was devastated. You know, it seemed like everybody in my life was either taken from me, had let me down, had abandoned me, or had physically abused me in some way. And growing up, I grew up with a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of distrust, and a lot of self-doubt. And I was very suicidal. I had made a couple of failed attempts. I'm just glad I wasn't very good at killing myself. You know, it wasn't until I got to high school that I met a teacher that saved my life. I became a teacher. I taught 18 years. I became a teacher because of this man. He changed my life. He saved my life. I remember the first day I met him, the first day of my high school career. I'm walking into my homeroom class, you know, feeling bummed out because life was beating me down. And this teacher was standing by the doorway, greeting kids as they come in, saying, good morning, good morning, good morning. And when I got to the door, he stopped me by putting his hands on my shoulder. And I looked up at him, and he said to me, everything's going to be all right. And I lost it. I started crying like a baby. So much so he had to pull me to the side to let the rest of the kids in. So you can imagine what them other kids were saying. Man, it's the first day of school. This dude crying already, you know? But what they didn't know was the night before, I had hopped the subway and took the train to the Brooklyn Bridge Street station. I got off the train, walked out of the subway, and I walked up onto that Brooklyn Bridge. Halfway across the bridge, I stopped. I looked down, and that day I had made a decision that I was going to end my life, and it would be no more failed attempts. And when I started climbing up that fence, I heard a voice in my ear that said, everything's going to be okay. And when I looked around, there was nobody. But this peace just came over me. I climbed down off that fence, walked back down off the bridge, hopped back onto the train and went home, and all I could think about was this voice in my head that kept saying, everything's gonna be all right. And that first day of school, walking into my homeroom class, I heard that voice again. And it was Mr. McGowan, my guardian angel. When I tell you every day, my whole career, I was fortunate enough to have him as my shop teacher because I was studying to be an electrician. So I seen this man every day for my whole high school career. And I tell you, every day I went into that classroom, he inspired me. He gave me some words of encouragement. He used to tell me I was amazing. I was like Spider-Man amazing? Because No one had ever told me that before. I never heard those words. He sounded like Chewbacca, but he said it so much, I started to believe it. He told me that I was destined to do great things. He was a Christian man, and he would tell me, James, God's got plans for you. Every day of my high school career, he said something that inspired me, that motivated me. I look forward to going to his class every day. In my 4 years of high school, I missed 4 days of school. And it was because of him. I wanted to make sure that was like my safe place. He saved my life. Before I met Mr. McGowan, if you would have asked me what it is I wanted to be, I would have said loved. Because that's all I was looking for. And I found it for the first time. And it came from a teacher, of all places. The last place I ever would expect it. Mr. McGowan opened up the door in my mind and allowed me to step through and to realize my worth and my greatness in life. He changed my life. And you know, by the time my senior year rolled around, I knew exactly what I wanted to be. I had a dream by then. I knew that I wanted to be just like Mr. McGowan, but on steroids. You know, I said, I got a dream that I want to do for millions of people what Mr. McGowan did for me. I wanted to give to millions of people what Mr. McGowan gave to me. I had no idea how I was going to achieve it, but I had a dream. And after I graduated, about a year after I graduated, I joined the military. I got to travel a little bit. I got beat down by life, but I kept getting back up, dusting myself off, always holding that dream in the back of my head, never forgetting it. And then one day in 2006, a friend of mine who was a teacher, he got his first head principal job at probably one of the worst schools in the city. And I'm working in the IT field. I got a great job. But when I heard he got that job, I called him up and said, hey, man, I want to help you change this school around. Because I knew it was my time. This was it. I said, what you got? He said, I got an English class. I said, no. You don't understand. I need something where I can be able to engage these kids and talk to these kids. I can't be dealing with no statewide tests, you know? So he said, man, the only elective I got is a computer class. I said, that's what I do. I said, are you kidding me? So he hired me. The first thing I did, I went to that computer lab and it looked like a prison. There was no windows in there. So I got permission to paint it up. I put all these positive posters everywhere because my job from day one was to change these kids' mindsets. That was my mission because that's what Mr. McGowan did for me every day. The things he would tell me, he changed my mindset, the way I thought about myself, the way I thought about my future. So that was my plan going in. And I couldn't do that if I had to teach English or math. All you teachers out there know I wouldn't have been able to engage them like, you know. So I had an elective class. And I decorated it up with all these posters, and I would stand out in the hallway like Mr. McGowan did. Greet my kids as they came in, high fives, fist bumps. And I would do different things to inspire them. You know, they were like my proving grounds. I told you one of my fears was speaking in front of people. That's where I started. I had a captive audience. I was like, they don't even know any better. So when I was talking to them, they were like, wow. I was like amazing to them, but I was like the worst speaker ever. But that was my proving grounds. I would talk to them. I would show them inspirational movies. I would show them inspiring documentaries. One of the most ones I did that blows teachers' minds to this day, even people when I tell them, man, every year I showed my kids a documentary, The Secret. Every year I made sure I did. And then I explained it. I didn't just show it to them. I explained to them. I taught my kids how to meditate. I taught them about visualization. Man, my job was to change these kids' mindsets, and I was on a mission. All right? But I got to tell you, the most powerful thing I did in my classroom came to me one night in a dream. Because when I would stand out in the hallways, I would hear kids say to themselves during passing things to themselves like, I'm so stupid, I'm dumb, I'm an idiot, I'm a retard, I'm ugly, I'm fat. All these negative things that they would say about themselves. And when I would ask them, why would you say such negative things about yourself? 99.999% of the time, they would say, oh, I'm just kidding. And that's when I realized these young people do not understand the power of the spoken word. And I said, I got to help them, because if I could change that, that's going to change everything. So in a dream, I came up with an idea to do a warm-up. All right? And I came across this block. And when you're on a mission, things just happened. I was in Hobby Lobby looking for something for my classroom, and I came across this block. It was like it was sitting there calling me, here I am, here I am. It was amongst some stuff where it didn't belong. And I paid $3 for this block. And this was my dream. I had a dream to start a warm-up where we would use the phrase, I am. That's what's on this block, I am. So I had an idea, if we did a warm-up that said, where everybody would hold this block and say, I am destined for greatness. And it was powerful. At first, I didn't know how it would go over. I figured these kids were going to laugh me out the room or something. But quite the opposite. They fell in love with this process. So much so, if I ever forgot to do it, hey, Mr. Trower, you forgot to do the warm-up. They would remind me. That's all they was going around the school. That's all they was talking about. I had teachers come up to me and say, man, what are you doing in your classroom? You're the only person these kids are talking about. They talking about you in this warm-up. But they said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because it's working. It's working. My question to you, each and every one, do you believe you're destined for greatness? That's right, because I know you are. But what I believe and what I know doesn't matter, because the only thing that matters is what you believe and what you know. And that brings me to a story of a kid that came through my class as a sophomore. His name was Zach, all right? Zach was like one of the most negative people I ever met, kid or adult. He was so pessimistic, none of the kids even wanted to be around him. He sat by himself in lunch, no kid talked to him. Every word that came out of his mouth was negative. I was like, whoa, this kid, he was really negative. And he walked around school like this, literally, with his head down, dragging his feet. And it's funny because he never moved out the way for nobody. Every time Zach come down the hole, it's like the Red Sea parting. Everybody had to get out his way. And I remember the first day that they assigned Zach to my class. I was standing out in the hallway like I always do, greeting my students as they came in, and I see Zach coming down the hallway. Sure enough, here he comes, with the Red Sea effect. Everybody rolling out the way. So when he gets to my door, I stop him, and I introduce myself. I say, hey, my name is Mr. Trower, what's yours? And he had his head down. Zach. I say, hey, Zach, it's nice to meet you. Can you do me a huge favor? Can you just look up and read this poster on the outside of my door? So after a little pause, Zach looks up, and I could tell he read the poster to himself because his body language, he was like, only positive attitudes beyond this point. And he put his head right back down. Right? I said, that's right, Zach. So you got to give me something. Before you can come into the computer lab, you got to at least give me a smile. So another little pause. Zach looks up and he goes, and puts his head right back down. So I kind of chuckled. I said, hey, that's a start. So I invited Zach into the classroom, and I pointed him to his seat, which was the last seat. I had 25 computers. I had 6 rows of 4 and 1 lone computer in the back by itself. When I tell you there are no coincidences, everything happens for a reason at the right time. I had 1 computer left, and it was Zach's. So I pointed to it. Zach walks back to the back and then instantly put his head down on the table. So I take the attendance, and I start the warm-up. I go to my drawer, I take out the block, and I always start it out, and I say, I am destined for greatness. And I'd give it to the first kid in the first row, and they'd go, I am destined for greatness. And it started making its way around. By the time it got to the 4th kid, I seen Zach's head pop up in the back when he heard what was going on. And the look on Zach's face was priceless as he watched each kid hold this block and say, I am destined for greatness. And when that block got back to Zach, Zach looked up at me, kind of sideways, looked like, he examined the block, and then he started looking around the classroom. He's in the back, so he's looking in the back of everybody's head, and he had this look on his face like, did I just join a cult? I mean, it was one of those looks, it was priceless. But then he did something else that took everybody by surprise. He asked a question. Zach looked right at me, and he said, I'm destined for greatness? And all the kids realized Zach asked a question. So just imagine 24 heads in the classroom slow turning like this. And it was awkward because Zach was like, man, everybody, look, and I had to break it. I said, yes, Zach, you are destined for greatness. And he was like, yeah, okay, whatever. All right. My question to you again is, how many times have you ever questioned your greatness? All right. How many times have you said, oh, it's too hard, or I can't do it, I'm not good enough, or anytime you made a statement like that, you questioned your greatness. And I'm here to tell you right now, ladies, God created you to be great. God did not create you to be average. We choose to be average. God created us to be great. All right? Thank you, thank you. And here's how Zach's story ends. Months go by, and one day during the warm-up, again, Zach does something no other kid had ever done before. He was like a trendsetter. But on that day, when that block got back to Zach, Zach stood up. He raised his hand up high, and I ducked behind my desk. I was like, because it looked like he was going to throw it at me. I had never had any kids stand up before, so it kind of caught me off guard. But when I looked over my desk, I see Zach standing there with tears in his eyes. And he blurted out, "I am destined for greatness." Yes. And now imagine 24 heads snapping around like, what? And they seen Zach standing there with tears in his eyes. It was one of the most powerful moments I ever experienced as an educator. Everybody in that classroom was fighting back tears, including yours truly. It was that kind of moment. And at the end of that class period, everybody left out. All right, Zach was the last one. He come up and he puts a note on my desk. He said, "Mr. Trower, I want you to read that." I said, "Okay, I'll read it." Because I was used to getting notes. You know, "Mr. Trower, you're the greatest." You know, "Mr. Trower, thank you. You're the most positive teacher I ever met." I even got letters that said, "You saved my life." They would either put them in my mailbox or slide them under my door, but none of them was brave enough to put, actually, I never knew, if they didn't put their name on it, I never knew who it came from. I had some that had no names on it. To this day, I don't know who these kids were, but they wanted to let me know how I impacted them. And he put this note, he said, "No, Mr. Trower," I told him I read. He said, "No, I need you to read it now." I was like, okay. So I picked up the letter, right? I started unfolding, I started reading it, and I realized right away it was a suicide note. So I jumped up, I said, "Hey, Zach." He said, "No, Mr. Trower, it's all good." He said, "I wrote that note months ago." He said, "I actually wrote it the day they put me in your class." And he said, "I was ready to follow through on it, and then you told me I was destined for greatness." He said, "At first I didn't believe you." He said, "Because every day I would go home, I would hear how I'm worthless and that I would never be anything. But you told me I was destined for greatness." He said, "So I came back to school the next day to see if you say it again." And I did. Every day he came in my class, I encouraged him. Not only Zach, every kid in my class. He said, "Mr. Trower," he said, "I got to tell you, I went from doubting it to believing it to knowing it." Yes, he went from doubting it to believing it to knowing it. He said, every day doing that warm-up, listening to you talk, watching those videos, he said, it changed my life. And he said, "I stood up today because I wanted everybody to know that I know that I'm destined for greatness." And then he said, "Thank you, Mr. Trower," and he walked out, left me crying like a baby. I'm just glad it was my lunch period. I didn't have another class because I would have been no good. Right? On that day, though, Zach's life changed forever. He was no longer the same kid. His body language changed. He was no longer walking through the school with his head down, open like this. Quite the opposite. When you seen Zach after that, he had his head up, chest out. The Red Sea still parted because he still ain't getting nobody's way. Right? He was still. But he changed. His mindset changed. He went from one of the most negative kids to one of the most positive kids. If he heard a kid saying something positive, Zach would come in there and encourage him and say, "No, don't think like that." He went from having no friends to being one of the most popular kids on campus. His mindset changed. And Zach is just one of hundreds of kids that I planted that seed, because that's all I did is plant the seed. Amen. I give him forward what a teacher gave me. That was my dream, to do for millions of people what Mr. McGowan did for me. On that day, Zach stepped into his greatness. Are you ready to step into yours? Huh? You should be, ladies. You should be. This is amazing, amazing company y'all with. I mean, it's funny. I'm going to get off to. When Yvonne, we met, right, she gave me this book. How many of y'all read this book? This should be like mandatory reading right here. You know, I'm a reader. That's all I do. I've read hundreds of books, most of them in the self-help category. When I go to the library, that's where I go. I'm not into the, romance novels and all that. Just like when I watch TV, it's got to be something I'm gonna learn from. I watch the Discovery Channel and, History Channel, something I can learn from. When I read a book, it's got to be a book that's gonna make me better, a better person, to think different. When I was, and it's funny because when she gave it to me, she kept saying, you don't have to read it. You don't really have to read all of it. And I'm saying to myself, you have no idea. I can't wait to get my hands on that book. I'm gonna read it. So when she pulled it out the bag, I started salivating. I was like, ooh, she got me a book. She knows me. She gets it. I've been highlighting this book lately. I've read this book. I even sent her a text with a picture. I've read hundreds of books. This is one of them. This is right up there with the best of them. This book is powerful. She talks about enthusiasm. She talks about never giving up. This lady right here, Mary Kay Ash, ain't nothing average about her. Ain't nothing average about this company. Ladies, y'all in an amazing position. I was so impressed with the award. How y'all winning all these cars? That is amazing. Can I borrow one? No. I don't even care if it's pink. No. I love pink. But I am so proud of y'all. I'm beyond words. It's incredible. I'm just so glad that thank you for having me at this event. I got one more thing, and I'm gonna get out of y'all head like I'm out of mine, all right? They say that once you discover how a magician does his tricks, that it's no longer magic. And I'm here to tell you, once you discover the greatness that is within you, you'll create real magic. Because each and every one of y'all are destined for greatness. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for having me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.